Hello, this is Joshua, November 5, Foxtrot Yankee. I've got the Elecraft KH1 here, and I'm going to talk about a quick adjustment that I made on this. And additionally, I'm going to put some Kapton tape on the inside, and I'll show you why. So this is the Edgewood package. That's what I ordered. So it's got the battery, it's got the ATU inside, the battery charger, it's got the key. So I've already pulled the key off. We'll set that aside. And then we'll open up the back here. So I'll pull this tab back, lift the cover, and then if you kind of maneuver this all the way back and push down just a hair, it'll slide out. So we'll set that to the side. And then we've got the battery. Like I mentioned, I ordered the Edgewood, so it's got the ATU here. And then it's got the, I think the battery, I'm assuming the battery charger is part of the Edgewood. Maybe it's not, I may have that wrong. Maybe it always comes with that. But anyways, it's in the instructions as well, but you want to make sure you install the little plastic holder on the barrel connector so you can pull that out evenly. And then you also want to hold this part of the board down so that it doesn't pop out. And I won't pop this out of here, but this board actually just slides right up. So it's just got some pin connectors there. I think maybe 4 back there and 4 there down on the bottom. Then another thing I wanted to show real quick is, I don't believe, maybe this wasn't intentional, but the key, or excuse me, the Allen wrench to adjust the key did not come inside the radio. But it does sit down in that little spot there. As you can see, it was a little tough to get out. But that comes in there, and then it's also got another little nut here to replace the thumb screw in the field, or the thumb nut, if you happen to lose it. So anyway, that's a nice little addition. I'm going to slide that back in there. And I did adjust my key when I took it out to the field. Before I took it out to the field, it ended up being too tight, so I had to undo that. But anyways, I'm going to pop these screws off here real quick. Before I do that, the issue that I saw with my radio when it came is, I'm not going to put this back on correctly, but I actually had a gap right in here on this side and not a gap on here. Which what it looked like is this encoder knob was not perfectly perpendicular to the board on the inside. And so that's the adjustment I made. I've already put it back together, but I'm going to go ahead and tear this back apart. So you've got a few screws on the front. Be real careful not to strip those heads out. The one's up at the top. We're actually going to remove this entire cover. And these screws are, they're all the same size. The one thing you'll notice is actually missing from this package is the whip clips, which I believe those actually will install on these holes, depending on whether you're left-handed or right-handed, which direction you have it set up. But those whip clips are back ordered at the moment. So we don't have those yet. They should be arriving, probably arriving fairly soon. They said back ordered. I don't think they gave a date, but that was in the notes on the order sheet that delivered with the radio. Okay, and so then from there everything is loose. So there, again, there's 4 screws on the top, front face, and then there's 1 on each side of the top, which is the antenna end. And really the only clearance issues are the barrel connector here. And so actually I said I wasn't going to take that off. I'm going to go ahead and pull that off. Now that I think about it, I had it off earlier. So I'm going to make sure it clears that little section of the casing. I'm just going to kind of gently wiggle it up and pulls right out. Okay, we'll set that aside. Now the only clearance issue we have is the headphone adapter connector. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this side of the board up kind of at an angle, and we should get it to clear clear the edge, and that leaves that connector kind of in place, and then it pops all the way out. So again, just be real careful doing this. Anytime you're handling internals on a radio, just be extra careful. So like I mentioned before, so this sits in here like this. There was a bit of a clearance issue right along here, and so I said this encoder is not perpendicular to the board, and that was indeed the case. So I have let Elecraft know about this. Maybe it's just a QC issue that they're going to have to pay attention to when these go out the door. But what I did to resolve that clearance issue was I held this kind of down, so down this direction just a little bit, and then I took my soldering iron and I reflowed both the structural connectors that are soldered to the board from the encoder knob, and then I hit each one of the electrical connectors, and then again with still some more pressure on it, I heated both structural connectors again, and then each of the electrical connectors. And I think I only did that twice, just going through each one. And then when I released the pressure, I could visually tell that it was perpendicular again. Put it all back together, and that did resolve the issue. Now, the thing that I wanted to do after putting it all back together is I kind of thought I would leave it alone, but I had second thoughts. This battery sits directly on the board, and I'm sure this is considered in the design of this radio, but I'm not real thrilled about that. And really, just to give me something that would show any wear, really I'm interested in protecting these components. But what I'm going to do, and this is recommended by me, simply something I'm going to try. I'm going to put, I think I'm going to go ahead and put Kapton tape along the back side of the ATU board here, and I'm going to cover the main board as well. I don't believe there's anything there that is at risk of heating, and it's not like the battery is a heat sink anyway. But I really just don't like the battery sitting on the back of that board. So I'm just going to throw some Kapton tape on there. Honestly, it's really just a preference. Just really for me, but I thought maybe some people would like to see this board opened up as well, and kind of how to open it up. So there's the top side there. The other thing I did notice, and I think this was mentioned in another video from somebody, but the adapter connector for the key actually sits at a bit of an angle, and actually this key looks like it's maybe at a bit of an angle as well, and I think that's intentional. Looking at the markings on the silk screen and the solder pads, it does look that way. You can see the top is kind of pointed to the right a little bit. It doesn't look like it's missed the marks. So maybe it's just a design element. I don't really know, but that's just what I noticed on mine. The other thing I'm kind of thinking about now is something I've done with other radios in the past. It's weird, there's some buildup on here. I think I did this on my QRP labs. I put some tape across the screen opening just to help protect the screen a bit, and a bit from water intrusion as well. I don't think I'm going to do that right now. But I've got my Kapton tape, and so one thing to consider is you really do not want to add any thickness to the radio. You don't want to increase any pressure or add any pressure, create any pressure on the battery. So if you're not familiar, Kapton tape is electrically it's non-conductive, and so you don't have to worry about shorting components with it. And it's also heat resistive, which is not necessary for this application, but mainly it's non-conductive. And then on top of that, it's extremely thin. So obviously you can't really tell that on camera here, but this is extremely thin, so I'm not worried about adding any thickness to it and creating, an impingement on that battery. So I think I'm probably going to lay it across this direction and then trim the edges, just because that'll be a bit easier to make it clean. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Actually, I'll go ahead and lay this one down, but I'm going to pause the camera here just for a minute. And I'm going to get this a little closer to where I can see it. But I'm just going to lay a couple strips along there and then one along the backside. So yeah, I'm just going to run strips along here, here, here. I can probably do it with 3, maybe 4. And then I'm also going to lay across the ATU. Kapton tape can be a little tricky to cut. I think what I'm going to do though is I'm going to try just running a blade along the edge here. Obviously be real careful not to nick anything. But I don't see, there's no component sticking out, so that should be just fine. So we got one side there. And we'll see if we can hold this properly. Okay. And I'm not going to get real fancy with this. I'm just going to get it covered up. And again, I'm not worried about thickness here because this is just extremely thin tape. But I'm just going to make sure everything is covered. And that also means we can do a bit of overlap. Just kind of eyeballing this. Yeah, I think I can do this with just three layers there. Alright, and then one more on the ATU. And we do want to make sure it does not impinge or cover up that pogo grounding pin. So there is a grounding pin, pogo pin here that electrically then connects to the back cover, and I have it removed here. There's also one on the power board as well. Okay. And I'm going to try and clean this up just a bit. Okay. So that's it. We'll go ahead and reassemble this thing. So again, the main clearance, I'm going to flip this back around here. The clearance issue is, got a piece of tape in there. The clearance issue is that connector for the headphones. So we'll put that in first, and then I kind of got to pull this back just a little bit, and then it just slides right down in there. So super easy assembly. And actually I'm going to go ahead and put these screws back in before I reinstall the power board. One thing to note is when you unplug your battery, you will lose your time. So if you've set UTC, or if you prefer local time on your radio display, if you use it, you will have to reset that, or rather set that again, because it will go back to 0, 0, 0, 0 and start counting. Again, in the manual it does mention, I think you have there's a capacitor in there that will hold power on the internal clock for some amount of time between switching. So if you switch the battery out, or if you or really just if you end up switching the battery on the fly. But I think it's like 30 seconds or something like that. It's not significant, but it's fairly easy to reset the clock. As I reinstall these screws, I'm just doing them real loose. I don't like to tighten everything up until they're all in place. Okay, and then I'm going to flip this back around again so it's the same way it was when I pulled it out. And so barrel connector kind of in opposing corners, but what you'll see is the pin connectors here need to go down, and then you'll also notice the grounding pogo pin goes on the top. And then I did find this actually sits into the opening in the casing a bit, so you've got to spread the casing out just a hair as you install this. And really just want to make sure that you're lining up the pins on the back side here, which I can see they're lined up. Doesn't want to go down. Let me take a look at those again. Yeah, they seem fine. So they're in the pins. There we go. Just want to be real gentle with this. Make sure it's lined up as you push it down. Okay, there we go. And then last thing is really just for the battery. So that will cover this area, the bottom. And then really the battery is going to hit up against these two barrel connector boxes, which should be perfectly fine. And I would suspect there's some protection on the end of these cells, so I don't think I'd worry too much about wearing through, but at the same time I'm going to inspect this battery occasionally, so we'll go ahead and lay it back in place. And then again, make sure you've got your pull connector, your pull tab installed. And what you want to do is push the back of the barrel connector in place. So once you got it lined up, you want to then hold, so put your thumb kind of on the top of the barrel port there, and then you should be able to get your thumbnail or fingernail on the back side of that barrel connector here as you push it into place. And you want to make sure that it's seated all of the way. And I think that can go up like that. And then dress the wires, make sure they're in place. You don't want them to stick out of the casing. So having those dressed down in there will also help keep things in place. So yeah, I will probably go back and put something on that screen, but it's fine for now. So, and then the battery cover, again, just slides in. Be real gentle with it. Get it into place. And you gotta go back that direction to flip it down. And then you gotta slide it back the other direction. And then just gently pull this tab out. Push the cover down, let go of the tab. There you go. And of course, I'll put the key back on. And I'm gonna turn this on. And what you'll see, so display mode, we'll change that back to operate. You'll see the clock has reset. So again, not a big deal there, but when you unplug the battery, it will reset the clock. So there you have it. A little bit of tape on the back of the board to really just give me a bit of peace of mind, but you also got to see the inside of the radio. All right, thanks for watching. This is Joshua N5FY73.